Good morning, teachers. For some reason, the video that I made yesterday did not upload correctly to Moodle. It's a program that's embedded in Moodle, and to be quite honest, it's fairly unstable, so it's not surprising that it didn't work, but that's okay. We'll just redo it today. As opposed to just recording my talking head, I'll just pull up the agenda here and we'll go through that. The first thing I talked about yesterday in the video, as was the case last week, was just kind of going over our primary reading, which was on assessment technologies and the benefits of assessment technologies. One of those would be, and probably the primary one, is that they provide teachers and students with immediate feedback. This has a number of benefits. For teachers, the fact that assessment technologies, and what we focused on primarily were traditional assessment technologies, that deliver formative and summative assessments. Google Forms is a perfect example of that. Socrata, they have short answer questions, multiple choice questions, true, false, and some other options in Google Forms. But there are a lot of other assessment technologies out there, non-traditional assessment technologies like Flipgrid or Educreation or Padlet, even something like that, that can be used to assess students' understanding, to get a snapshot of their learning. But when we talk about traditional formative and summative assessments, giving students a pre-assessment or giving them, a quick, exit slip, or, to kind of find out, where they are at the end of a lesson or at the end of a class. They generally take time, especially for us middle and secondary teachers who are going to have 150 plus students. You got to grade all those. Well, with these tools, as soon as you hit stop, you get the grades, that they're graded. And that immediate feedback allows teachers to adjust their instruction. And, this can be a benefit, but can also be, and this is just me summarizing research on this, and some of this goes beyond the research that I share with you guys. I believe what I'm going to be citing right now is an article by Marzano. One of one of the problems with getting that immediate feedback can be for young teachers, especially. And I relate to this because as a young teacher, I'd spend my weekends at the library, of course, pre-internet, preparing my lessons. And I had one way to teach it, and I'm thinking specifically of a grammar lesson. I had one way to teach that lesson that I knew, and if students didn't get it, what do? Your first time you've ever taught it. You don't have a tool belt full of tricks or pedagogies. What do? Just say it slower and louder the next time. So it can throw teachers off to see, to assess their students and see that no one got it. And they need to reteach, but they don't have any other, like I say, any other methodologies for teaching that. Benefits also for students though, right? So students, again, just making a personal connection, my son always felt like he got the material. You ask him how he did after a test, he said, always did great. Well, he didn't always do great. And by assessing students the day before a summative assessment, just doing a quick informal assessment and letting them see where they are in their understanding of that material can help them as they go to prepare for that summative assessment. Other benefits for using assessment technologies, this allows, additional benefits include differentiation of instruction. So for example, students who are ADHD, who may be, in a normal classroom, you're going to be asking questions. That's a way that you do a lot of informal assessment, is, asking students questions during your instruction and after your instruction. And you get a smattering of answers from students, but not everybody is engaged. And whether it's you're calling on students or you've got a can of popsicle sticks with names on it, You know, once that student's name's been called, or maybe they're just gambling on it's not going to be called, they may be disengaged. Well, if they've got their um, mobile phone in their hand, their tablet in their hand, their Chromebook in their hand, and you're constantly um, you know, peppering them with questions that they have to answer using one of these tools, then they're going to be more engaged. And you know, increased engagement oftentimes correlates to increased motivation, and those are some of the benefits that we see, especially when we talk about tools like Kahoot. When we're talking about gamification, and as you know from the Wang article, you know, the game-like atmosphere that's created by these assessment technologies generates excitement, generates energy, and competition. And I have mixed feelings about that personally, but what the research shows is that students do respond to that. Other benefits, and so by differentiating, let me just circle back and finish that thought. So you're differentiating your instruction, you know, for students, like as I was saying, students who may have ADHD, because you're keeping them more engaged because they're having to be active in your classroom as opposed to being passive during, like I say, again, maybe a presentation that you're giving, a lecture, or PowerPoint. As you know, with tools, another non-formal assessment tool like Pear Deck or Nearpod, you can embed assessments in those. Actually, Poll Everywhere that we looked at will allow you to embed questions, assessments in your PowerPoints or in your Google Slides. All right, additional benefits. Assessment technologies can be used to generate discussions, create opportunities for authentic learning using real data. So I used to, every student in the state of Tennessee, when I taught in their junior year, wrote a persuasive paper. And one of the ways you can support your argument is obviously with data. And you know, you could use this in the classroom to generate data. One of the articles or one of the topics that we would discuss kind of in to prepare for this activity was, or one of the topics we would discuss was, should students be required to clean the school? And you could survey students right in class and have you know, data to support the opinion on it. You could talk about it, and it presents it in bar graphs or pie charts, and you could talk about that authentic data. But you could also use it to generate discussions about, maybe you're talking about 3 branches of government, right? And you want to poll students about which one they think is the most important, and then use that to have a discussion about why they think it's the most important, or is it the most important? Okay, they provide additional benefits. Assessment technology provide an opportunity for all students to have a voice. So again, if you're using those popsicle sticks or you're calling on students, oftentimes you have students in the classroom who want to dominate the discussion or answer all the questions. This allows everyone to answer, especially students who may be shy. It also allows them to answer maybe more truthfully than they possibly would because it can be anonymous. It saves time, huge benefit. That's one of our traditional barriers to technology integration is lack of time. Okay, this opens up or creates time for teachers to do other things because they're not having to grade those assessments. Other benefits, we talked about gamification. The last one that I'll mention, and there are more, but these are the primary ones, are they're green, right? So I encourage you to Google how much money a typical high school spends on copying paper and copier paper and toner a year. I want to say that my principal, because I was asking him at the time about why we had, this was again 20 years ago, I was asking him why we had all the Coke and candy machines in the building when this was a time when childhood obesity was very much in the news, and he said, well, it pays for our paper. And he said we spend about $6,000 a month on paper and toner. And if you've been in a school, you know that that copier is running from an hour before school starts to an hour after it starts, and the full time in between. And so this is a way to go green. All right, so that's the primary benefits of our assessment technologies. Just looking at our learning targets for this week, we're going to shift gears. We're going to be talking about Mobile learning, we're going to be talking about the use of tablets and laptops and cell phones, mobile phones, benefits of those. We're primarily going to be focused on the use of apps with these mobile devices. Don't forget, looking at our agenda, to take a moment for mindfulness during this stressful period of time. I know that for many of us it still is. Just had a conversation about that yesterday with a colleague. So don't forget to take a moment to get yourself in the right place before you start your work each week. If you have any questions, again, just reiterate, there's no reason that, this is difficult teaching this. It's the first time I've taught this online. It's not perfect, but there's no reason that you should have any questions about what your expectations are, what due dates are, submission requirements, any of those things. You can always talk with me on Wednesday nights. It doesn't have to be Wednesday night. If another time works better for you, whether it's in the day or the evening, just let me know. We can meet via Teams, or we can just talk on the phone, or we can text. All that information is on the syllabus. So for mobile learning, looking at number 3 on our agenda, it's hard. In the past, I've shared a couple of reviews of literature. I just really haven't been happy with that those articles. So this year I just put together a review of literature on mobile learning, mobile devices, which encompasses self-regulated and self-directed learning. And I have a link for it there for you. I also have a couple of other items I'd like for you to read. One is just a short article about 4 qualities of the most useful apps. And then I have a couple of rubrics for app evaluations, one by Tony Vincent and the other one by Kathy Schrock. So I just actually got finished writing a chapter on rubrics for mobile apps, and the one that we settled on, I wrote this with a colleague, was the Harry Walker. And to be quite honest, I couldn't lay hands on the Harry Walker rubric, but it's okay because both the Kathy Schrock and the Tony Vincent rubrics are based on Harry Walker's, and they're a little more recent than his, so they'll be perfectly fine. Well, the reason we settled on Harry Walker's, it's not the most thorough, and again, like I said, Tony Vincent and Schrock's are based on that. It's not the most thorough, but probably the most thorough is the Cherner one. And if you look down here at the bottom, so the articles I normally share are this article, and I believe it's also, the top article. The top 2 articles are the ones I normally share. These are the reviews of the reviews of literature on mobile learning. But I also share, I believe it's this one, a comprehensive evaluation rubric for assessing instructional apps. This is probably the most thorough rubric. It's by a couple of researchers named Lee and Cherner. And the reason we didn't choose this one as our top rubric is because it's 8 pages long. And most teachers are not going to have the time or take the time to evaluate every every app using an 8-page rubric. But if you want to read about those or read more about the benefits of mobile learning, I've got those links down here for you. So in addition to reading these, number 4, I'm going ahead and introducing Technology Project 3. I know you're still working on Technology Project 2, but for those of you who may be go-getters and be finished, this is an opportunity for you to get ahead on this. And we'll continue to work on this next week. This is not due until June 10th, so 2 weeks from now. So next week I'll share several of my favorite apps with you and have you do some activities with them while you're working on this project. So you've got 2 weeks, but I thought I'd go ahead and introduce this and allow you to do the reading and start looking for the apps. I'm not going to talk about Technology Project 3 here because I did that in a different video, but that's number 4. That's the video right here, the link to it. I've also included just a few resources. Again, Kathy Schrock. These are two very popular instructional technologists, Tony Vincent and Kathy Schrock, so it's good to become familiar with those. I shared her page, which is a neat page because what she does is she aligns the apps with Bloom's taxonomy. PBS, great resource, but more kind of, I guess, for elementary, but I just shared that one with you. You know, if what I would encourage you to do is just Google, you know, best apps 2019, best science apps 2019, best secondary math apps 2019, and you'll find plenty of them. Finally, we've got a couple of NTI resources here, two more articles, one about trauma-informed approaches during the pandemic, and also how to foster a strong sense of community in your virtual classroom, along with a Jefferson County video on Edmentum. I'm not assessing you on these. I don't have you, filling out any, answering any questions or taking any assessments on them or writing anything about them. These are additional. These are normally not part of the class. The class kind of focuses on, obviously, on a lot of NTI, just because the digital nature of it, but these are in addition. So our homework this week, you'll be completing Technology Project 2 and try to get a head start on your readings for the mobile technologies and Technology Project 3. And that's all I have for this week. Hope everyone is well. Look forward to talking to you next week.